Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles. My name is Armando. I am 46-year-old. I live in Culiacan in northwestern Mexico. I was married to Jacinta. She was 42-year-old when we parted ways. We did not have any kids and lived a great life as long as we were together. I used to drive a taxi and life was fine. She used to work at a local bank as a teller cashier and used to make good money. We met through a common friend and our families knew each other. So, after dating for about 1 year we got married. We tried to have kids, but we found that Jacinta had fallopian tubagenesis. She did not have tubes. She was born without them. The doctor informed that she could get pregnant, but with an IVF. She was heartbroken and did not want any kids anymore. I supported her and never in the next 20 years touched the topic anymore. To me, Jacinta was an ideal wife. She was caring and ensured that the house was kept in shape and my needs as a husband taken care of. At least that is what I thought. It was a fine morning in the March of 2017 that I decided that I would not go to the airport at my usual time. I delayed going as I knew all the flights were a bit late. Jacinta had already left for her bag, and I took my own sweet time to eat my breakfast and get ready. As soon as I got ready to leave, I could not find my car keys. Where did I keep them? Did I leave them in my other trousers and forgot? Did Jacinta wash them? I tried looking for them but could not find them. You know, there are times that you want to find something but cannot find it, and then decide to wreck the whole place trying to find it. That happened that day. I had searched my entire closet and all the drawers, and finally, I went to Jacinta's drawers. I searched hard, rolled the drawer upside down, and found something I was never supposed to find. A diary fell out, and from that diary fell out a used condom. It seemed that it was used ages ago. It was dry and crumbled. I was taken aback as I have never used any in my whole life. I picked it up and picked up the diary. What I read there was going to change my life. It was Jacinta's handwriting. As I read, my tears started rolling down my eyes and I was filling up with rage. My life was going to change forever. I was afraid that my rage will make me do something that I might regret forever. To take my mind off what I saw, I started cleaning up the room and kept everything where it was. I found my keys. They were still in my car. This made me lose my mind. I started the engine and started to rush to my wife. I was so mad that I had no clue where I was and how fast I was. Suddenly, I heard a huge bang, and then everything went dark. I woke up and found myself looking at white lights. Was I dead? I looked around and found a woman in a nurse dress and thought, do they have nurses in heaven as well? Suddenly, she touched my forehead and said, wake up, big man. You have been sleeping for 5 days now. I was still alive. Shit. My memories started coming back and I thought that it would have been better I was dead. In a few hours, Jacinta came in. I didn't say a word to her. She was crying and was thanking God for keeping me alive. Bitch. I thought to myself. I was moved to a bigger room where we have 5 patients already on beds. I was the 6th one. A few weeks later, I moved back home. I could now walk around and was fully mobile as before. However, I was waiting for my insurance money so that I can buy a new taxi. It was a week later on a fine Saturday. I was on my breakfast table, sipping my coffee and reading my newspaper. I read an article and asked my wife, did you know any Jose Alvarez? He seems to be working for your bank. What about him? She asked. He was found hanging from the bridge last night, with his tool in his mouth. Must be the cartel. She added. As per the cops, it could be a work of a jealous husband. They found that he had relations with many women, and it could be that one of the husbands did him. I could see my wife gasp and walk out of the room. I smiled and walked to her. As per my wife's diary, a young Jose showered Jacinta with praises and compliments on how good she looked and how well maintained she is. She had written that she felt that Jose had begun to flirt a lot with her. She was concerned that he may be trying to seduce her, but wrote, that will never happen. She noted that as a mid-40s woman, it made her feel young and attractive again, and she didn't realize how much she missed that kind of excitement in her life. She wrote that the reason for this diary was that she was bursting at the seams to tell someone about this, but she couldn't tell anyone because several of her girlfriends had bragged about over-the-boundary flirting to her, and she always chastised them severely for even considering to flirt back, knowing how easily these things get out of control and end in a messy divorce. Obviously, she couldn't confide in her husband on this subject, hence the diary. She promises herself to keep it light and never let things go too far. She also commented that I'm as boring as staring at a picture of an albino cow in a blizzard. She notes that I joined a Wednesday night bowling league recently and she hardly notices when I'm not there. She complains that if this is all she has to look forward to in life, she'll just go crazy. I looked up from the diary and rhetorically asked aloud, why didn't she say something to me? I had no idea it was so bad for her. I'll have to think of something to spice things up a bit. Then I went back to reading, and my mood went from sympathetic and sad to angry and hurt. She began to rationalize how having a one-time fling with Jose would add a little spice to her life. She added that I could benefit as well. She had other reasons, which were all bullshit of course, why she should do it, but just once. Finally, She decided that if she was very careful and discreet, she could do this dastardly deed for our benefit and not get caught. They planned and agreed to meet and have some fun. She had all these romantic notions of how this and that would be, after being led down the path to marital destruction by a silver-tongued, experienced player and wife seducer. It all fell flat when he took her to a cheap motel at the outskirts of the city. I was a stinky room, but her lust overpowered the stitch. Jose, however, was not what she expected. He was vocal and rough. All her expectations of a Tinder encounter went down the drain. He verbally berated her and me while drilling her. Once he was done, he just got up, dressed, and left her in that room all by herself. As per her entry, she promised herself that she would never let that man touch her game. She did follow through with that when she rejected Jose's plan for another meeting. Her next entry, she wrote that she got what she deserved out of the affair, and vowed that she'd never do it again. She couldn't stand the thought of how much she could have hurt me by what she'd done. She promised to turn over a new leaf and be a better wife to me, in every way she could think of. How fucking great. The bitch cheated on me, and I remembered how she was so good to me in the following months. The lying bitch was just trying to relieve her guilt. Well, at least she learned her lesson. Or did she? As I reached my wife, she was sitting on the edge of our bed with a tissue. So, I can assume by your reaction that it was the same guy. I didn't think you knew him all that well. How close were you? I asked, twisting the knife a little. He was just a guy that worked with us for a while. He wasn't the nicest guy in the office, but he didn't deserve that kind of death. I was thinking of his wife and kids as well. They didn't deserve that. From what the article implied, he was a serial womanizer, and the list of suspects is as long as your arm, if they can ever find them all. What they didn't deserve was a father and husband like that. Now his wife can find a real man to care for her, like I've cared for you. I used the phrase, real man, and from the shiver she made when I said it, the meaning was not lost on her. I leaned over and gave her a peck on the cheek since her head was still lowered where she couldn't look me in the eye. There was a happy spring in my step for the first time in weeks as I went out of the house. Ain't karma, bitch? It was a week later again on a Saturday. I was at my breakfast table, once again with a newspaper, when I found the headline to an article on the 4th page. I read it aloud. Man found hanging on the bridge. Reading further, I noted that his tool shoved in his poo pool. His name is Ignacio Ayala, 29-year-old, and was divorced a few months ago. Hearing his name, my wife rushed to the toilet and started vomiting. I got up from the table after finishing my breakfast to check on Jacinta. She was still in front of the toilet on the floor. I grabbed a washcloth and dampened it for her. She took it when I offered it to her and wiped her mouth. Did you eat something last night that disagreed with you? I think I'll be okay. It's just so brutal how he was killed, she said. So, you did know him? The paper said that he was a serial womanizer also, and they fear a pattern might be developing. They interviewed his ex-wife, and she said that it was just a matter of time before a jealous husband caught up to him. I guess he had a long list of wronged husbands after him, too. Maybe the cops will shorten the list when they see any overlap between the two. Say, you used to work with them, too. Did you know anyone who both of them might have banged? Maybe you should call the cops and... She cut me off. I didn't know either one of them all that well to know who they'd been with. She replied in a panic. Composing herself, she continued, I couldn't be of any use to the police. Okay, but if you could help them find the killer with any little detail, you might be able to prevent another wife-stealing bastard from being killed. Wait, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Killing off a few sleazeballs might send the right message to the rest of them. Do you know what I mean, Bate? That's a terrible thing to say. No one deserves to die like that. Surely you're not defending these low-life, self-centered weasels, are you? I mean, if I thought for one quick minute that those scumbags had their way with you, well, all I can say is that they got off easy. I'd have had to torture them for a while and let them know exactly why they deserved to die before I'd let them enter the next world. I smiled. No, of course I'm not defending them. It just seems so unnecessarily brutal, that's all. If you're saying that you'd have made them suffer first, then you're scaring me. I've never known you to be violent like that. She said. That's because no one has ever betrayed me like that before. And I truly hope you never have to find out just how much that thought upsets me. I've got to go to work. Do you think you'll go in? Or are you going to take today off? I'll be okay soon. I feel much better now. I walked up and left. Ignacio Ayala, her second lover. Recently divorced and a smooth talker. She had mentioned in her entries about more of what she did to feel better after her affair, and then noted that since I was totally clueless, that she should back off before she raised my suspicions. It was early October when he was first mentioned, as well as how young and desirable he made her feel. He even brought her a flower for her desk a few times. She told him that she'd have to tell everyone that Jack sent it to her, or rumors would fly. He was okay with that, as she deserved them no matter who got the credit for sending them. Smooth bastard. She'd agreed to meet him for a one-time fling in his apartment. He lived nearby on Bleecker Street, and they could make it there for a quick nooner without taking any more time off that she'd have to account for later. This time, he was trying for an extended affair, so he pulled out all the stops. He had rose petals on the bed, soft music playing, and candles burning in his darkened bedroom. He took more time with the seduction than Jose. She reminded him that it was just a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but with a lot less resolve than she said it before they had made love. Yes, she used the term made love. They didn't fuck like she did with Jose, she fucking made love to him. I was already in an angry, confused state about her giving in to a second lover, but this fucking tipped the cake. She went on to comment that this became a full-fledged affair that was supposed to be a short fling, and she regretted that, but she didn't regret the romance and the wonderful feelings she had for their first few meetings, until he became controlling and obsessed with her backdoor intimacy. She commented, "All it should take this time would be a couple of blow jobs and one of my famous meatloaf dinners, and it will all be okay. Last time I almost overdid it. After all, now I've had 2 lovers and he is still completely clueless. LOL." She was fucking laughing at the way I loved and trusted her. I felt the urge to purge. It took almost the whole week until the next Friday night for Jacinta to quit the furtive looks in my direction. She must have finally told herself that since they were both skirt-chasing bastards, it was just a coincidence that they were both killed and castrated. Heck, the second one may have been inspired by the first murder. Saturday morning arrived and so did our morning breakfast meeting. After the last 2 Fridays, she was dreading it, but I looked forward to it. As I entered, she started off right away with, "You were late getting home from your bowling last night. That's 2, or is it 3 weeks in a row? You're not doing anything you shouldn't, are you?" Me? Do anything wrong? You've got to be kidding me. I'm as boring as looking at a picture of an albino cow in a blizzard. I wondered if she would recognize her own words. She still gave me a few extra quizzical looks as I read the newspaper. I opened it up and right in the middle of page 1 was a picture from the murder scene of the police spokesperson trying to assure everyone that the killer would be caught and soon. I read the details and proclaimed to Jacinta, "The Reaper has struck again." That's what they are calling him now. It's definitely the same guy, they say. This time the guy was parked in his car along the lake, and a popular makeout spot near the marina. This time his dick was found tied to his hand. I lowered the paper to see the fear in her face. His name was Sergio Barrera. She screamed and ran into our bedroom. I smirked again and followed her. After her second affair ended, she didn't have as much remorse, so a lot less was written about how she made it up to me, because she didn't do much at all. Mostly her comments were about how good the first few times were, and how she was surprised that she hadn't controlled herself and kept it at just once, as she'd planned. The entries got sparse again, until late March when yet another young man showered his attentions on my loving wife. It only took him 10 days to get her to agree to meet him for lunch in his car. He parked in a makeout spot, and they ate a quick lunch. Then they made out, and it made her feel like a teenager again. By their third date, she had been shown how to lay the passenger seat back so they could do it right there, which they did. She only got off twice, but they were big ones because the possibility of someone catching them made it even hotter. She did her best to put herself back together for the afternoon at work, but still feared that someone might notice. She carefully double-checked herself on the drive back to work. Each time they got together, she described how she had absolutely mind-blowing orgasms, and wondered if she could be some sort of exhibitionist and not have known it. She ended this fling once his requests for hand jobs got a bit frequent. I followed her, after I'd eaten, of course. There's no sense in letting a perfectly good breakfast get cold. She was getting herself under control from a fit of crying when I came in. She heard me and looked up. I saw total fear in her eyes. Could she actually think that I was killing off her lovers and she might be next? If she was, I could only laugh silently at her. I take it from your reaction that you knew the victim of last night's killing. Also, shit, that's 3 for 3 with you. Why do you know all these womanizing scumbags well enough to feel sorry for them? Why do you? I made it appear that the light above my head just flickered on for a second. Please tell me that you didn't have anything going on with these guys. I don't know how you could even think such a thing. Are you accusing me of what? Screwing around with those bums? Just what are you saying here, Armando? I thought she switched gears way too quick for this not to be planned. I'm not accusing you. I thought it to be one hell of a coincidence that you knew all 3 of the bastards. I was just teasing you. I know that you love and respect me way too much to risk our wonderful years together over a few moments of forbidden pleasure with the likes of those cheating creeps. I was just surprised that you've known all 3 of them well enough to get upset about them. It's not them. It's how heinous the murders are. Then why didn't you get upset until after I read his name? You were sitting there completely composed until I said, Sergio Barrera. That's what put you over the edge. She looked away. It was building up, and I was mentally pleading with God that it should be a total stranger this time. When I realized that my firm does business with his company, and I've seen him in the office a few times, I guess I lost it. It's not that I knew him all that well, but that it happened to someone I know. I guess that makes sense. Maybe I should ask you, since you thought I might have been messing around with them, if you killed them. She raised her head to look into my eyes. My dear, I said, giving her a peck on top of her head, If I thought you had been stepping out with one man, let alone 3 men, you wouldn't be sitting here asking me questions. I have to go, bye. I strode out of the room knowing that the knife had been shoved in a little further and twisted a bit more. I laughed most all the way to work replaying the scenes in my head. This Friday night, Jacinta waited up for me to come home from my bowling. It was a bit later than normal, but not the almost midnight arrival time from the last few weeks. It's not like she could sleep anyway, as her nerves were on edge. After all, over the last 3 Fridays, 3 of her former lovers were killed, in the order of their affairs with her, each killed near the location where they bedded her, all with their dicks indicating their own personal fetish. Jacinta checked me very carefully as I came in the door. I had beer on his breath, but no sign of blood on my clothes. What are you still doing up, dear? You're usually fast asleep by now? Do you have a guilty conscience? Did you spend too much on clothing this week? I asked. No, I didn't spend too much this week on anything. I had a little indigestion, that's all. Within 10 minutes, she thought I was sleeping the sleep of the innocent. She thought, how ironic that I would call it that when I believe he somehow found out about my affairs and is tracking down my old lovers on Fridays, while he's supposed to be partying and killing them off. But, if you did know, why hasn't he confronted me? Why hasn't he kicked me out? Or at least called me a slut? It's like he slips into another personality that knows and kills, but doesn't know that personality exists the rest of the time. It just doesn't make sense that he could do that. He doesn't seem any different than normal. I'm sure he doesn't know. He can't know and sleep like that. It would be killing him, eating away at his very soul, if he knew. I can't act any different or let on in any way about my little flings. I must be brave. She rolled over and closed her eyes, determined to get some sleep. Just as she settled in, I fidgeted, and she could have sworn I grumbled almost incoherently, die, why fucker, die. Her eyes were wide open at this point, and she knew sleep would be a long time coming. I was faced away from her, eyes closed and a big smirk on my face. Saturday morning came and I had the newspaper in my hands. Okay, now let's see what's in the news this morning. I picked up the paper and she nervously awaited the possible news of another victim of the Reaper, because damn it, she had had another affair. I was silent for several moments as the tension built. Just as she thought there were no killings last night, I broke the silence. Well, it happened again. Another man found dead in his office, naked across his desk. This time his unit was found lying in the middle of his chest, pointed at his mouth. What do you make of that, dear? I'm sure that I don't know what it could mean. Why would you even ask me that? Because I know that your bank worked with his company just a few months ago, so I'm sure you met the man. His name is Vicente Garcia. Jacinta fainted away and slowly slid out of her chair onto the floor. I smirked as I watched her go down. I finished breakfast as if everything were perfectly normal. I stepped over her wilted body as I took the last piece of bacon. My mind flashed back to another section of her diary, detailing how her bank financed a project for his company. She wondered excitedly if she would find her next lover there. It seems that she would end up with the boss's son, Vicente, who was the vice president of marketing in her stable. She described how she selected him, even though he would be the oldest of her lovers at the ripe old age of 39, a mere 8 years younger than myself, as compared with decades younger of the last 2. She told him that he was a big flirt, but she was sure that they could work out something mutually beneficial. He responded by locking his office door and sweeping all the papers off the top of his desktop with one swoosh of his arm. How romantic. It was just like in the movies. His fetish, shooting between the tits. She met with him several times a week, but could only have special meetings once a week, when they could schedule a meeting with the exclusion of others in the company, right before lunch, so they had the office to themselves. After their 4th special meeting, she'd grown so tired of cleaning his seed off of her face and hair that she told him that they would have to end it if he did it again. He told her that was his favorite way, and most times it was the only way he got off, so she should get used to it. Where he would tell her husband. She countered with an offer to let his wife know, and so the fling ended. She commented that her favorite part of this fling was their romantic first time, and she really liked it. She thought that she could get more of the romance by having a series of one-night stands, say one a month. Then she said that was too risky as this wasn't a big city, and if she had that many lovers, sooner or later it would get back to me, and she didn't want to end her marriage, as sooner or later she would grow bored of these flings. Then she would need and want only me to take care of her for her golden years. Her ranting went on to say that she was as good a wife as he deserves. After all, I have had 4 flings and ended them without Armando having a single clue. He doesn't pay any attention to me anymore, so I have to get it somewhere. I wonder who my next lover will be. Maybe someone with a British accent. Wouldn't that be sexy and romantic? Maybe you would look kinda like Brad Pitt. I almost can't wait to see who it will be. Jacinta slowly came to on the kitchen floor. When she saw the newspaper as she rose to sit on her chair, she remembered why she'd been there. That made 4 former lovers. She was actually out of former lovers. Where was Armando? How long was she out? Did he just leave her there and go to work? That would mean that he lost all of his feelings for her and that he had to know of her flings. Just then, Armando walked into the kitchen with a wet washcloth and offered it to her. How long was I out? Only long enough for me to get a wet cloth for you. It seems that you're 4 for 4 on his victims now. It's looking like one hell of a coincidence, isn't it, baby? And that's all it is, a coincidence. Are you sure that you don't know anything that could help the cops find the killer? I'm sure they'd be very grateful, I playfully inquired. I'm sure that I don't know anything. Just leave me alone. Come down. I was just kidding with you. If you can't take a joke, you're going to have one hell of a time putting up with me in our retirement. You need to make an effort too. It's not like you'll be spending your golden years with Brad Pitt. I patted her on the top of her head as I left. Jacinta had been tired, from lack of sleep, and jumpy all week. Every little sudden noise set her off, even the furnace kicking on did at once. Armando had been behaving blissfully normal, except for the fact that he hadn't initiated sex in a long time. After he left for his party on Friday evening, she began to think about it all. Could he know about my affairs? She wondered. She knew him to be a passionate man from their years together. There's no way he'd do nothing if he knew. You confront me, or I come home and find all my clothes on the front door. Maybe he's gathering evidence, and he only suspects something. If he only suspected, then why has he been hinting that I might know something and that I should go to the cops, especially if he could be involved in their deaths? None of this makes any sense. I just wish I knew what was going on in his head. One thing is for sure. I'm following him to that damn bowling alley tonight, just to make sure. Just then, her cell phone rang, and it was her current lover, Pancho Aguilar. Hey sexy, I'm really looking forward to tonight. Is he still on for his bowling? Yes, he is, but I'm not sure that getting together tonight is such a good idea. I think he may know more than what he's letting on. Maybe we better call it for a while. I'm sure you're just being paranoid. Hot stuff. If it'll make you feel better, we'll make sure that he goes bowling, and then we'll start our party. I'll watch for him to leave, and I'll pick you up, and we'll follow him to the club. Once he's inside, we'll rush back home and get the party started. You know I can't wait to get inside you. I guess you're right, Pancho. I was thinking along the same lines. Her better judgment was clouded by the thoughts of how great his big dick felt inside her. This would be the 5th time they got it on, ironically beginning the same day that he found her diary, and it was showing no signs of slowing down. The romance had gone, but the feeling of being completely filled by Pancho completely overshadowed any thoughts of missing the romance. He usually leaves about 5:45, so be down the block by 5:30. I can't wait, lover, she added in a breathy voice. I'll be there, baby, don't you worry your sweet ass about that. As soon as I see him pull away, I'll move to the end of your driveway. When you get to the car, we'll be able to take off after him. He won't recognize my car, so we won't have to follow too far behind him. It's a date. I can't wait to get you back where you belong, inside me. I can't wait, either. See you tonight. Just like they planned, they followed him to the alley and he casually went inside, unaware that anything was afoot. They waited across the street for a couple minutes to see if he came back out, which he didn't, and they rushed back to her house. Hurry, lover, she cooed. I want you to do me in his bed. That stupid shit has no clue about us, and it turns me on to do it right under his nose and not get caught. He's so clueless. I knew he was stupid to let a hot babe like you out of his sight. You deserve better than a man that ignores you to go enjoying with his boys at the bowling of all things. They were so hot that clothes began flying off as soon as they were in the house. 90 minutes later, Jacinta said it was time to clean up and she got in the shower. When she came out, she gasped at the scene before her. Pancho was still lying in bed, with a large knife sticking from his chest, his lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling, blood covering the sheets. A short, slight, nerdish man was tying what looked to be fishing line around the base of Pancho's big unit. He spoke calmly. I'm trying to keep it big for you, Jacinta. I know how much you love it, as I heard you proclaim so many times this evening. It is so big that I just didn't have the heat to cut it off like the others. She faded. When she woke, she was flat on her back on the bed, naked, with Hugo's somewhat deflated big unit inside her again, and Pancho as crushing weight. He was 6'4" and 245 on top of her. Her wrists are tied to his wrists, and her ankles to his with cloth strips. She can't move at all and her panties are in her mouth. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, but you passed out before I could. My name is Rafael Cano. I am the elder brother to Armando Cano. He spoke in a very calm voice. I saw your husband when I was in the hospital. He was lying in the bed next to me. He never realized who I am under the bandages on my face. I could see his pain in his eyes, not the physical pain, but the pain you caused him by your flings. I consoled him, and then I probed him for more information, like that he partied every Friday night, and where he'd found your diary. I broke into your house and read your diary that next day while you both were at work. I made a copy and used all the information in it to track down and plot revenge on those scumbags that felt they could fuck another man's wife and get away with defiling a marriage. I killed one of you lovers each Friday night for the last 4 weeks, while Armando was enjoying, so he'd have 20 or 30 witnesses for his alibi. Since each of these inglorious weasels was a serial womanizer, I figured the cops wouldn't be able to figure out which wronged husband did it, because the list would be quite long for each one, and, at best, only 50 to 60% complete. Tonight, I will kill for the last time. When I leave, I will turn on your ceiling fan. Please notice the cloth string tied to one of the blades. I have calculated that it will run for almost 6 minutes when that string is exhausted from the cardboard roll it's on, and we'll pull those papers from your nightstand onto the space heater, causing a fire. If the cops do an investigation, they will find no trace of the string, as it will burn completely away, as will the cloth binding you'd ass wipe gear. They will think that you and shit for brains knocked the papers off in the heat of passion, and were overcome by the smoke that you failed to notice while fucking each other stupid. So, tonight, you will die, knowing that your flagrant indiscretions have caused the deaths of your 5 complete jerks that knowingly fucked a married woman, and yourself, an unrepentant cheating slut. I read your diary and you really are a piece of shit. You know that? I really don't care what you think of me. I can only hope that you will agree with my decision that you die. After all, he's much better off without a cheap slut for a wife. We can all agree to that. He flipped on the wall switch that started the fan, and a few seconds later, she heard the back door close. She saw the string unwinding and began to panic. She struggled to get Poncho off of her and could only move her arm slightly. She began to try to scream for help, but the panties in her mouth prevented her from being heard. Just as Raphael predicted, 6 minutes later the fire began, and smoke filled the row. As the smoke filled her lungs, she noticed the light fading into darkness as she passed out for the last time. The police looked hard at Armando, but there were so many people for his alibi, as well as security tapes at the bowling alley. Then there was the fact that the lover's manhood was still intact, so they couldn't connect it to the other crimes. They were thorough enough to look at his finances for the last few years, and they noted that he didn't have the kind of money it would take to hire someone to do these deeds. They checked on the whereabouts of his close friends and family during the murders, and came up with nothing. Armando even volunteered to take a lie detector test and passed with flying colors. While coming out of the police station, Armando went down his memory lane and recalled his time in the hospital. He recalled a guy to his left who had his face covered in bandages and he could see his eyes. They looked scary. Armando was unable to move a lot but kept turning his head to keep looking at that guy. The next morning, he saw him looking at him, and then he spoke. "Esposa te rapio el corazón, life broke your heart." He nodded. The guy then closed his eyes and then he fell asleep. In the evening once again, he looked at him and said, "Venganza." Vengeance. Armando nodded yes. "El seguido castigará, vives tu vida." The Reaper will punish, you live your life. Then he turned around and slept again. Armando remembered that it was at this moment that he smiled. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.